Yes.
We have it right.
All right, good evening. This work session of the Osseo School Board is being held in the forum room of the Educational Service Center on Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. The work session is being audio recorded. The recording will be made available on the district website within 2 business days after the work session is ended. With regard to the audio recording, our communication staff has asked that we share a friendly reminder that side conversations during the work session are picked up by the recorder and can affect sound quality. Also, conversations during transitions between agenda items are on the recording as well. The intent of the school board work session is to allow for school board discussion of topics. Work sessions do not include an opportunity for audience members to address the board. To acknowledge attendance this evening, I'll ask that all present at the table state their name, starting with the person to the left.
Tanya Prince, school board member.
Keith Tate, school board member.
Erica Foster, school board member.
Steve Flisk, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary and Middle Schools.
Kay Valella, Executive Director of Community Relations.
Peyton Adams, Student Board Rep.
Naomi Cooper, Student Board Rep.
Christian Vargas, Student Board Rep.
Brian Bass, Assistant Superintendent for Equity Achievement in the high schools.
Anthony Paradis, Executive Director of Technology.
John Morstead, Executive Director, Finance and Operations.
Brian Severson Hall, Executive Director of Community Engagement.
Sarah Mitchell, school board member.
Amy Moore, General Counsel.
Kelsey Dawson, school board member.
Kim Heil, Superintendent.
And I, Thomas Brooks, school board member, am present. The purpose of school board work sessions is to build trust and teamwork, to exchange information, and when applicable, to provide direction in order to facilitate efficient and effective decision-making at regular board meetings. Dr. Heil, will you please share your check-in?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Brooks, Chair Prince, and school board members. We are going to take 1 second. We're going to let Amy Tollefson introduce herself this evening. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Tollefson, District Principal.
And soon to be Assistant Superintendent starting July 1. So congratulations. All right, so we have a full plate this evening. So we're going to go ahead and get started on equity policies. So I'll go ahead and have Amy T. You can go ahead and introduce what we have this evening.
All right. Good evening, Board Chair Prince and Vice Chair Brooks. We are excited to be here again this evening as we had an opportunity to work with our board reps and work with our legal counsel to review some policies. And there were questions raised, some feedback. So we're just here to share some of that information with all of you tonight. So we were asked to review 3 different policies: racial equity 101, 102 harassment and discrimination, and then 508 gender and inclusion. So I'm going to let our board reps speak to some of the conversations and questions, and our legal counsel, Amy Moore, can jump in and fill in some of the information that we'll talk about as needed.
And if our board reps can introduce who they are, so.
I'm Peyton Adams, Student Board Rep for Office Unified.
Naomi Cooper, Student Board Rep for Park City.
Christian Vargas, Student Board Rep of the OILC.
All right.
Okay, so for Policy 101, Racial Equity and Achievement, we kind of noticed that staff and admin are trained about being culturally responsive in school, and we're kind of just wondering if students were kind of, trained for that, if that makes sense. Like, is it part of their curriculum? Can that be part of the curriculum for advisory classes, or can we have more electives that kind of teach, like culturally responsive ideas and topics? And then for the next one, we had growth in staff and colored students. And for me, for Osseo Senior High, this year I really noticed that there's a lot of staff and admin that are people of color, which kind of help students, like my friends and I, bond with them and kind of be more comfortable to speak out and talk to them more. And then for the last one, we noticed that there's a lot of consistent communication in schools like Park Center, where Naomi said that there are multiple language resources in French, Spanish, Ojibwe, and more.
Did any of the 2 of you all want to expand anything that she said, Naomi or Christian?
She did perfectly.
Oh, good. That's a good man right there. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, for the communications bit, if there's anything like important that has to go out, per se, like recently there's a lot of graduation stuff for seniors. For the parents, they have it in almost every language available for the parents to understand. I mean, there's VIA, there's Hmong, there's English, there's other languages, just so that parents can fully understand, even if they can't understand English. So I think that's good, and we need to stay consistent with that for the parents who don't fully understand English.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's my turn. Policy 102, prohibition against discrimination, harassment, and violence. And we want to improve clarity on how to report an incident, more engagement with student handbook for each trimester. So instead of just like handing them the handbook and expecting them to read it, maybe have a little slides that go with the handbook, or like teach something, just so that they're more engaged instead of just expecting them to read it and having them sign at the end like they did read it. And then consistent message for the video. And we thought an entertaining video might work. So reporting considerations, offering multiple reporting options, so like including a trusting adult, making sure like if we have some kind of poster around the school, like if you have a problem, this is who you report it to. If you don't want to report it to this person, you can bring another adult into the room, just stuff like that. Making sure the student feels safe and supported while reporting it, because if the student doesn't feel safe while reporting the incident, they won't share their incident correctly. They'll end up skipping details, rushing over things, or like not including things at all if they don't feel safe. Provide clear and student-friendly explanation for the process. That's where the video comes in. It's going to be a great idea, guys. And
Do
then,
you want to talk about how we read through the policy and how you thought that was really clear?
yeah, I think the policy is really thick and it's a lot of words. And I was like, wow, I didn't know y'all did all this. So I was like, bingo. You know the school bus videos where they break their arm and they're like, you shouldn't be like me. I stood up in the middle of the bus and I was swearing and I was cursing and I broke my arm and now I'm in a wheelchair. Yeah, we should do something like that. So I want big budget, big production. I'm being a film director. I got the chair and everything. Go.
I'd also like to add that how important it is to make something memorable, especially something as important as that. So I think creating a video would be a non-negotiable. Even a lot of my friends, when they think of advisory, their brain immediately goes to that bus video because it's so memorable. And it's literally just we put our energy into making it more memorable for students and we get more from it.
Yeah, and they'll end up learning something, like not standing in the middle of the bus while it's moving. It'll be something.
So you guys are volunteering?
Oh, yeah, I'll get injured. I'll do it. Okay, next one, communication and transparency. Transparency is a big part because you can have the meeting, one, and then you can have nothing. And when some students report something and they don't hear anything back or they don't know what's going on, they're like, did they really do anything? And that's when they're like, maybe I should have never told anybody because nothing happened. So transparency and follow-ups are really important to students so they feel like they're truly being heard and something's truly getting done. Now, full transparency probably can't happen with all situations, but a little like peek behind the curtains might be able to help some students feel safe and like that they're being heard. And clarity on how to report and repeat incidents and address them, that's just basically saying, one, if it gets false reported and they keep on false reporting, what do we do about that? And then two, if one student like reports it, it gets solved, but then something happens again and it's not a false report, will they report it? And if they report it, will it be taken seriously?
This is policy 508, gender inclusion. We talked about how the consideration to include rights to 18-year-olds and the importance of identifying safe staff for each student and how can schools emphasize that. So I think a direct officer would be great and optimal, but we talked about how everybody connects with other people differently. So then we talked about how can principals remind staff and provide direction for that staff to be more open to that and to be there for students, because if one staff is fully trained on that, not everybody's going to connect with them.
Can you expand on more on age 18, including more rights of 18-year-olds? Anyone?
I guess we were just wondering because in the policy it was like it kept saying that parents or students of parents will have to be like notified or something, like if they want to change their pronouns or something like that. And we're kind of wondering, like, if you're 18, you know, you're your own person, you're legal, would that still be considered? Yeah, that's kind of the question.
All right, so now we have an opportunity for any of you to just ask any follow-up questions related to the different policies that our student board reps had an opportunity to review.
So these policies, along with others, will go to the policy committee in June. Will come to the full board in August for first reading, second reading in September.
Yeah, well, thank you all for taking the extra time to review the policies. I know it's not the most exciting thing that we do at all times, but it is really important that we have your perspective, especially on policies that directly impact you and your peers. So with that, board members, any questions? Anyone want to start?
So yeah, on policy 102, clarity on reporting, love the idea for videos. Do you, I guess like in your experience, do you feel like your peers are reporting incidents, or do you feel like they're, like, is it under, do you observe underreporting?
It's more like, if there is a form reporting, they're like, I don't know if I should do it because the school doesn't really do anything. Or they'll tell like a teacher, but they're not telling the right person. And does that teacher report it to someone higher up? I have no idea. There's not really a lot of people who go up to the source and they're like, this is the problem, this is what I want you to do, this is how I want you to solve it. Nothing like that. Like if someone's getting bullied, I don't think they really go to the vice principal or the principal and they talk about it. Nobody really does that kind of stuff. Having a anonymous form or like some kind of form where they can fill out reports, that would be great too. Instead of like trying to find a person and have a meeting with them, because I don't think all students know the process of how to do that and even where to begin.
I would say when I went to Maple Grove, there's a lot of underreporting, and it makes it so hard because there's so many factors. Maybe somebody doesn't trust a staff member, maybe they don't trust it because nothing happened. There's so many factors that go into it, so it makes it like really hard to address how we can make it better, to be completely honest. And the social pressure and other things, so that just makes it really hard. So I think the best we can do is just find the ways that we can make it easier for those students to find the ability to connect with staff.
And then another question, in your kind of experiences, do you feel like we have a significant problem with discrimination and harassment and racial discrimination in the student community, or like what's your experience?
I would say in my experience, I haven't really seen it. I think it's because Osseo is more diverse, so you know you can kind of find your own clique. But yeah, I haven't really seen any discrimination amongst ourselves.
I mean, with Park Center, we're also pretty diverse. And with my own little community, I haven't really seen anything where it's like, you're black, nothing like that really happens. It's not like old-time movies where it's like that. I don't know. I would say, yeah, no.
Okay,
Not really.
good.
I feel like Alia would know a lot more than me about this, but I can't really speak for Maple Grove. I mean, the OALC, I wasn't really involved in the community as much, but yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you.
So we have our Stop It line. So how does that get communicated to our students so they know to use it, or do you know about it and you just don't want to use it, or what do
The
you
first year they introduced it, Park Center wasn't even on the Stop It app. You could look up Park Center and say school not found. So even if you wanted to report something on the Stop It app, it wasn't on there. I could report about a school in Texas. I mean, I could look up a school in Texas and report something there, but Park Center wasn't on it the first year. I think they updated so Park Center was on there, but I don't think anybody really uses that app.
I had a friend of a friend, they were like in 10th grade being dumb, and they submitted like a false report, and they both got followed up on. That's my only experience of knowing about Stop It, so that seems positive that both of the people actually got checked on and see what's going on, but I don't have any experiences outside of that, or if you guys have any to share, because we just hear that it works and it helps, but there hasn't been actual examples, at least in my eye. So.
Yeah, and for me, like when it first came out, I remember like videos saying like, oh yeah, you Stop It. And I remember like these posters all around school. I've never personally used it, and I've never heard of friends that personally used it, but I've heard about it, so that's good.
I don't know, I feel like some people, they feel like their issue might not be big enough to report. And yeah, some things is kind of petty, so don't report that. They probably don't want to hear about it. But I think some things are like, they build up over time, and it becomes a bigger issue, and it snowpiles, and so them not reporting it ends up turning into something bigger.
The tip line's anonymous too, so if you wanted like that connection back to a staff member, you'd have to throw that in there.
Stop It's anonymous or?
Stop
Yes,
It's
it's very anonymous.
Did they make it clear that it's very anonymous? Okay. So I feel like if I was a student back in 10th grade, I'd be very afraid of being seen. You know, even if the problem was real and it wasn't my fault, being seen is like the hardest part. So I can see why that's even harder.
Amy or Kay, and maybe you're the wrong two, but are either of you able to speak to like how we've communicated the Stop It app to students, like how we've promoted it?
I know there was a big push initially. I don't know if it's like a consistent, like annual, like every year. And I do remember recall like a video and posters throughout the schools. And I think it was done in an advisory class at some point in time, but I don't know if that's like an annual thing that has continued since its initial launch.
I know Vanessa's here too. I know Rise has brought that up too, or was working on the reporting.
So it is supposed to be an annual piece that we embed in our citizenship lessons and the opening weeks of school that we review with students in homeroom or advisory. So that should be an annual experience that the students have. Our identity-based harm protocol is also a part of that work as well for an opening month of school.
Did it come up, because didn't we just recently do a lesson too about identity-based?
Right.
Yeah, so did it come up then too? That'd be a great spot for it as well.
Yeah.
Talking about Stop It.
Not in that particular lesson.
No, okay.
But when we do a similar overview.
In the beginning.
In the beginning of the year, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We are talking about moving that lesson to October during the National Bullying Prevention Month.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
And we ask our students, or we ask our sites to do handbook reviews 3 times a year. But as you can see, they're probably not as effective as they should be and need to be. So I think that's also something where we can consider how do we incorporate that into that review, where they're saying, video would be obviously much more meaningful messaging.
And by the way, students, Stop It is monitored 24/7. So if something pops up where there's 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. and is critical, our team gets that and we respond to that overnight. So if you want to share that with your students as well.
That's good to hear. Feel more safe. I feel like one of the things that could possibly be done is, just could be me, but I feel like, I don't know how like the lessons are about Stop It and being able to ask people, but I think it kind of starts the younger you are, develop that trust earlier. So maybe for middle school and elementary school, we can emphasize even more that it's okay to ask people for help and that you can connect with people. So when they do get into high school, we have more people asking for help. Because isn't Stop It like a new thing, right? Like last 6 to 8 years.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was in middle school. I went to like the Parnassus Preparatory School. We didn't have anything like that. So it was very hard for me to even ask for help on anything or even use any of the apps because I didn't have that trust built. So I think maybe if I could say anything to take away from these meetings, maybe we need to incorporate it younger and make sure that they know in their brain that it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
So then going forward, they will have better success. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's really good.
Just so you have the number, there have been 1,659 tips reported to Stop It this year.
Oh, wow.
1,659.
Well, like Christian's question, is it promoted, Dr. Howell, in middle school? Do we have the Stop It app for in the middle school, like on the walls and things like that?
Yes, right? We stopped
Just
it
not
on
middle
the
school.
I've seen it.
walls. It should be district.
It's even
wide.
elementary.
It is
Yeah.
elementary too, Steve?
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
it on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think your peers kind of understand that, you know, a lot of times, I mean, I think we see this as adults too, like, people won't always see what happens after. I think that's also, like, I think, well, I can't remember who said that, but, you know, that's part of it. When you report, it's like you can't always, because of privacy, know kind of what happened after. And do you think there's a better way to communicate that piece of it?
Maybe just like, I mean, they could say, it depends on the situation, you know, you can't just say, oh, it's finished. If it was something really big and their life was like kind of dependent on it, and you just say, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But then what next, you know? And speaking off of personal experience, as someone who's took the time to try to report something, it's difficult. Like, you don't just decide one day, oh yeah, I'm gonna report this. I'm gonna be really confident and I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna show. That's not how it works. Most of the time you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of scared. And I think people are just, they're afraid to show them true selves, because once people know how you really feel, then you're vulnerable. Then you can't go back. Then you can't put back on the mask. And then it's embarrassing. And Stop It's, I don't know. I kind of compare it to like, something bad. Because it's like, what if I report something really meaningful to myself and they respond back and I know that they know, that we know. And I'm just like, oh my God. So I think that's why a Google form to like, maybe an anonymous tip to your favorite teacher or something would be helpful. And they would like respond back. Like, they don't have to know it's you, but maybe they could respond back with a nice like careful message or something. Something like that.
Good.
I don't have any like additional questions for you. I just wanted to acknowledge that I heard you loud and clear on the videos. I am also a very visual person, and so yeah, I mean, if we can find the time and the budget to create some memorable videos, like, I definitely think we should do that every chance we get, especially when it impacts, you know, student safety. And then, of course, the culture of our schools as well. And then also just wanted to acknowledge what you said about transparency and following up, and how important that is to building and maintaining trust in the process. I love the idea of us promoting this earlier on. I know we have 5th graders now that have cell phones and can report, 4th graders. I think it's getting earlier every year. So, you know, building trust early on and looking long term at how we can potentially increase trust. But yeah, transparency and following up in a meaningful way is, I think, always important. And I know one of the things that we talked about in policy committee was making sure that if a student does go to a trusted adult, even if it's a random adult in the hallway, that they are mandated to make sure that it's reported. And we talked about our process of ensuring that there's accountability there. And so I know that you sometimes can't always get to that one trusted adult, and you shouldn't have to rely on one trusted adult in the building to follow through. But that was kind of a takeaway from us, was really honing in on the accountability piece for every staff member in the building that sees something, observes something, or receives a report from a student.
Well said.
Did I miss anything?
No. Very well said, thank you.
You know, going forward, I mean, when I'm not going to be a senior, I'm excited for all the students, because as like things start changing with social media and as mental health becomes an even bigger scope than it was 10, even 5 years ago, the students get even more support because we're continuously adding to it. If we improve Stop It and we improve all these things, it's just going to get better and better for our students, so I'm excited for that. and how open, like socially, and how acceptable it is to struggle with mental health now. So I'm excited for the students to have that help.
And just let me know if you need a little director on the side.
Naomi, talk to Kay.
With the cameras that we can buy, if it's within the budget.
Need an internship.
Yeah.
Paid internship.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, we are honored this evening to have our American Indian Education presenters this evening. It's an honor to have you here. We'll give Ethan a little bit of time to get his computer going, and then we'll have him introduce. So, do you want to say more, Dr. Betts?
Sure. So, thank you, Dr. Heil, Chair Prince, Vice Chair Brooks, members of the board, cabinet, and community. Excited to be here with representatives, including parents, scholars, and staff from our American Indian Education Program. I just would like to share a recent highlight. Director Dawson was with us at Prairie Island last week for our spring TNET consultation, and it was, let me back up. The consultation is our Tribal Nation Education's consultant, so they give us feedback on how well our commitment and our efforts have gone to improve the experiences within our American Indian Education Program, feedback we've received from APAC and scholars, and so it's typically one where they're pushing us, right, to be better, and sometimes that push can feel like, can be hard, and so in this one, we were the last site to go and to present our work, and it was consistently a positive and complimentary and highly acknowledging of the work of our APAC, of our leadership, Ethan Neerdales, and the staff, as well as the district's commitment to support and invest in the growth and expansion of our programming over the years. And it was outstanding. I mean, we had artifacts, and we were able to speak to experiences. And typically, when this happens, sometimes it can feel like, oh, it's just our American Indian staff that are presenting. But no, we had staff who were not a part of the AIE program staff who were sharing the pieces of work that we've done. So we had special ed talking about the work of a dream catcher and making sure that students who are receiving IEP services or have been, that their parents have been notified that they're being considered, or their parents have requested this, making sure that there's American Indian Education staff that are made aware of this so they can be supportive in helping the family navigate those experiences. We had our Gifted and Talented curriculum that's been developed, and so there were two traditional games that were integrated this year. Ethan, help me if I get this wrong. So there's a deer toe game and there's a pumpkin seed game, and these are like, they commented on this being like a lost game, not a lost game, but a distant game that hadn't necessarily been brought back in years. And so she was super acknowledging of the fact that we brought this traditional game forward and made it alive again. And so it was such a wonderful experience. And they also acknowledged the work that we've done around language revitalization and making sure that not only is our commitment trailblazing, as some of the TNET members themselves have talked about some of the roadblocks they've experienced in their respective communities around growing the language, but that we actually have our scope and sequence published. We work with the University of Minnesota. We're pursuing bilingual seal certification, and then I think we may have a student who's gonna speak later, who's talking about not only exhausting the curriculum here, but now heading to the University of Minnesota and accessing some of the language coursework there. So lots of great stuff. So I wanted to share a little bit of the highlights, because that, like I said, it can be a hard consultation.
It's an understatement.
This was very positive, so I wanted to begin with that. So with that, I'll hand it over to our highly respected and acknowledged and recognized coordinator for our American Education Program, Ethan Neerdales.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Ethan Neerdales, the coordinator of our Indian Education Department. I'm just here to talk a little bit about supporting the academic success and cultural identity of our American Indian students. And a little bit about our department, the Indian Education Department. Our mission is enhancing the cultural identity of the Indigenous child. That's the best way to put it in English. But we like to do everything from our Indigenous pedagogies and frameworks. So we say, Oyate Nipikte and Dalkota, so that the people will live. It's a very simple mission, but that's the root of all of our programming, our experiential learning. That could be around field trips, it could be in the classroom, it could be on the weekends or the evenings. It might be using Indigenous music, Indigenous math, science. And so we're not just a club or a pull-out program, but we're a core component of the Indigenous students' experience here in Osceola schools, both during the school day and throughout the year. And so we've got this image here of some of our ambassadors for our district. One of them's but they represent our district at district powwows and community powwows around Indian country. We just had our 31st annual powwow over at Osceola Middle School, as well attended. Several of our scholars were there, and we had our senior honoring. So I always like to really highlight our student leaders. And so we're joined by several student leaders here, as well as our staff and parents, and we'll definitely hold some time for their voice. A little bit about Indian education, the why we exist, because a lot of people are wondering, what is Indian education, why do we exist? And this is really rooted in tribal sovereignty. There's a history of treaties negotiated between Indigenous people in the United States. It's also tied to the U.S. Constitution, Article 6, treaties on supreme law of the land. And because of this unique relationship to American Indian tribal nations, this really dictates how we partner with tribal nations and how we support American Indian students based on these treaty obligations, both state, federally, and internationally. And we've included this image that I always like to give a pop quiz to our educators when we do a PD of how many tribal nations are there in Minnesota. If you don't know, there's 11. It's a state standard. And then usually we ask them, can you name them? And typically they name the casinos. They don't name the tribal nations. And this really highlights the invisibility of Native people, Native students in the contemporary world. So I just always like to put this map up here. So we have 4 Dakota nations and 7 Anishinaabe nations here in Minnesota. And so a lot of the educational experiences we do are supporting American Indian students, but also within our state there's the Indian Education for All legislation in 2023. So later you'll hear a lot about our partnerships with Talented and Gifted, Title I, and other mainstream educational experiences here in Osceola schools. So we currently support 543 American Indian students around the district from over 80 different tribal nations. Not all of our students come from 1 or 2 nations, but we have students that are Dene, students that are from Alaska tribal nations. Primarily our students are Ojibwe or Dakota, or a combination of tribes, but there's 543 students that look very diverse because a lot of our people are mixed with other tribal nations, other races and ethnic groups. And because of this, we're often invisible in the classroom or talked about in the past tense rather than present or future tense. And so by having Indian education visible, we're really educating not just administrators and teachers, but the general student population about who we are as Indigenous people. There is some concerning trends around the state as well as within our district around American Indian student achievement. So I did want to highlight the state and district graduation rate trend. One thing that's important to note, because we're such a small population, these percentages can be highly impacted by 1 or 2 students. And oftentimes we have students that are mobile, might go back to the reservation or to another school district, and sometimes they're counted as a dropout, even if we've confirmed they've graduated in the district they've gone to. So that was something that we noticed in last year's data. We had 2 students that transferred out of the district, ended up graduating, however they were counted as a dropout in our MARS data. And because the numbers are so small, that makes a significant impact on the graduation rate. Historically, the OSSEA graduation rate has been higher than the state average, but there's a lot of work to do. So we're going to offer some solutions to this as Native community members, parents, and students that have gone through and been successful in this system. Some of the other things I wanted to highlight are the disproportionality of out-of-school suspensions and behavior incidents for American Indian students. American Indian students in OSSEA district are suspended at a rate of 2.57 times more than white students for the same behaviors, which is deeply concerning when we have the lowest attendance rates, lowest graduation rates, science and reading scores. Also, our students make up 2.2% of the enrollment, but over 4% of the suspensions, so nearly double the representation within the district. This also pairs for our black students in the district as well. American Indian students involved in behavior incidents are 1.3 times higher than white students during 2 school years ago for any behavior. It could be insubordination or poorly defined behavior things. So we're looking at how do we define what these behavior incidents are, and could some of these be cultural things like not making eye contact, and the teacher might be frustrated about that and write a student up. Another thing with disproportionality is our American Indian students are disproportionately high in special education, particularly for EBD and learning disabilities. We have seen this data track down about 15% for our American Indian students within the district, but we are still highly overrepresented in learning disabilities. And so these are some of these areas for improvement that can be changed with teacher mindset, student services mindset, as well as involving cultural liaisons in the IEP meetings, behavior meetings, manifestation meetings. In past years, Indian Ed staff had not been involved or invited to these meetings, but since we've required an invitation for any American Indian identified student, we're starting to see this data significantly improve. A little bit more about Indian Ed. We're funded by Federal Title VI, which is one way that our students are identified through a federal enrollment form at the time of enrollment in the district at the enrollment center or at on-site enrollment in an elementary school. We also receive the state Minnesota American Indian Education Aid. Those two dollar amounts, as well as Johnson O'Malley, can only serve American Indian students. They can't be supplanted to be used to serve other students. This has been negotiated in treaties by our ancestors. So it's a special pot of money specific to serving American Indian students. And it has different restrictions than some of the other federal title dollars and state aid. We also have recently received the second round of the MDE Native Language Revitalization Grant. The first round was $500,000 for our district to implement Dakota and Ojibwe language programming at the high schools, and that is open to all students. So right now we have students from a variety of backgrounds taking both languages, really enjoying themselves, learning about Indigenous people in an authentic way, learning about their classmates and peers, and really just embracing the relational nature of our languages. You know, English is very transactional language, it's a trade language, but Dakota and Ojibwe are immensely valuable in terms of the relational nature of the language, how we connect to each other, the values embedded in how we connect to the land. And so we're seeing an increase in enrollment slowly but surely in our native language programming, and we're excited for that to continue in future years as we move to the new site in Crestview. One of the other unique things about Indian education is due to the state and federal funding, we are required to have an American Indian Parent Advisory Committee that has an annual vote of concurrence that really determines how well is our district serving American Indian students. The concurrence vote isn't just about Indian education, but it's about how are our administrators and teachers serving American Indian students, how are we creating a culture and climate that welcomes our students to show up as their authentic selves, and how can we advocate for academic success and well-being of American Indian students at all facets of our school district. What our program looks like with our staff. Right now we have myself, we have Ojibwe and Dakota language teacher, 1.0 FTE, and then we have 2 elementary specialists, 1 middle school specialist, and 1 high school specialist, serving over 500 students. So we're essentially a small school. We serve more students than some of the schools in this district with just 7 staff. Additionally, what this program looks like, weekly Indian education classes that are during the school day, they rotate at their time so the students aren't missing like math every single week. cultural field trips. Everything we do is intergenerational experiential learning, so parents, grandparents, it's really from birth to death, or I say from the cradle board to the grave is invited to our experiences. We have a beading club, we do drum and dance, regalia making, we offer Dakota and Ojibwe language tables, which are family-based learning that's not just conjugating verbs like how we might have taken a Spanish class in high school. It's actually using total physical response, muscle memory to learn our language and access it through motion. Traditional arts, we have wooden stick lacrosse practice. It just was today at 4:30 at Northview Middle School. We do winter storytelling. We just did a Star Lab with our elementary students where they're brought into a inflatable planetarium and they learn about indigenous star knowledge. So Dakota and Ojibwe star knowledge. We're all kind of normed in Greek and Roman star knowledge, but we never get access to African star knowledge, Australian star knowledge, Ojibwe star knowledge, Dakota star knowledge. And so our students are seeing the diversity of just indigenous knowledge. Even just here in Minnesota, how different is the night sky between an Ojibwe person or a Dakota person? We're also excited about the American Indian Cultural Resource Center at Crestview. We just wrapped up our Tribal College and University tour. We took students down to Santa Fe, New Mexico to the Institute of American Indian Arts, where they learned about the cinematography, they learned about fine arts, they learned about how to curate a art gallery. And then we also took them to Navajo Tech, which is the first tribal college to offer up to a PhD. And so they learned about real grassroots solutions to problems in our communities and could really see themselves reflected in the curriculum, the development of those programs. In past years, we've taken students around tribal colleges in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. And it's really an important opportunity for our students to learn about what education looks like when it's tribally controlled. A lot of times our CRCs are educating students about the university system or tech schools, but these tribal schools have a lot to offer to all students, but in particular our Native students. We also host student honorings and recognitions for 5th grade, 8th grade, and senior honoring. And these are all key components of recognizing our students in a cultural way. I'll pause for a moment. A lot of the work we do is around student engagement and belonging, and I thought maybe the parents, I'd give them an opportunity to share how this has impacted them and their parents or their students in our systems.
My name is Nicole Perry. I have 2 students. We've been with OSSEO through their whole schooling. We started at Rice Lake. We did BMS and now are both at Park Center. I have one graduating. We were not as lucky to have like the biggest program back in the day, so we did not participate in Indian Ed back when they were at Rice Lake. When we got to Oakland Middle is when we started to find that this was a resource for us, and it's become a great resource for my daughter who was like, I'm not going to college, I'm not doing any of that, and started going on the college tours with Indian Ed and has really seen like what her possibilities could be, and is now going to Fond du Lac Tribal Community College next year, and she's going to do Indian education and music production, and then going to transfer to the University of Minnesota for her bachelor's and see where she goes from there. So that's a great thing for us. So she got some direction in life, which is great for myself as a parent. And then just things for us as like, as a community, like the Indian way is community, and to see yourself in life every day at school and be represented is a great thing. You feel immersed, you feel connected, you feel like, hey, I'm represented and then this is where I belong. And when you have people to go to and you have resources, it makes your day just a little bit easier, or I don't know, like just you feel like you can get through the day just a little easier. Yeah. So my daughter's had a lot of struggles through life and a lot of things, so she's had some great connections with her staff, and so we're grateful for that. So
I think it's there's a lot of kids who struggle, they just don't have the connection and they're looking for something, and this is
it's just a support system that they know is always there. Like my son also was struggling in middle school, and that's when we got involved too. We came from the charter school and back into the 279, and he we started in Indian Ed, and lacrosse was big for him. Just getting with all the his peers and the counselors, and being able just to have that support system, making these sticks that was huge for him, being able to fall back on that. Yeah. Can you go back on
Yeah, I was gonna say, I grew up going to a Native American immersion school. I went to Four Winds in Minneapolis, and it was kind of it was great for me, and I was hoping to find something like that for my kids. And so it's great to have this come back into the schools and be so involved and see it grow into what it's becoming, especially with the language of revitalization, especially having them be able to take that in high school, and having that with our cultural resource center, and having that if we're with the preschool, and having that be something you start with, the kids are going to pick it up and they're going to use it every day, and the younger you use it, the more they'll take it on, and I feel like that's just going to be great for our community.
Yeah, it's been great, especially since we've taken on Dakota too, and now it's in our house every day now. Before, if you guys wouldn't have brought that on, or partnered with the program, it wouldn't be in our home, and now it's there every day. So not only is my high schooler taking the class, but my middle schooler is going to the language tables that they offer. So it's I can tell you that we were in the program probably about 10 years ago, and it wasn't what it is now. Now it was kind of just sporadic and all over the place, and we did go to classes and there was drum dance, but these guys have really worked hard. Ethan has worked hard to bring it all together and have that sense of community, and make sure we're including everybody and finding all the kids. And now it's kind of just so much is going on. It's not just a program, it's its own entity. It's we're kind of it's growing, and we're very lucky. And we see the progress that the district has made, the partnership, and it's great. But we are growing, and things are changing,
and I will say, I've been at that TNAC meeting for the past 3 years, and like they said, it wasn't just the Ethan show, so I really appreciate the work that you guys have put in that it was nice to have you guys a part of those answers, and not just being hey, Ethan.
Everybody is stepping up, but it's becoming, I don't know, it feels like this district could be a leader, and it could be big, but it is a program that's becoming so big, it needs to be its own department, and I'm so glad that we're moving to Crestview, because it's going to give kids the chance to openly come in and out, feel like they have the freedom to just be a part of that community whenever they need to.
I did want to quickly talk about the importance of the language revitalization work a little bit for those that don't know. One of the reasons this is so important to our community is our languages are critically endangered. Very critically endangered, on the cusp of extinction. And so much so that in Minnesota we have one first language speaker left of Dakota language. That's a first language learner. We have thousands of second language learners. So we're really cultivating our own teachers and our own language revitalization network by having our high school students learning and pursuing the bilingual SEALs. Ojibwe is not far behind with just a handful of speakers. And this is due to the historic American Indian boarding schools and residential schools throughout the United States and Canada, where our languages were illegal until 1978 with the passage of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. So for us to be able to offer both languages for credit in our schools and have licensed teachers teaching both is a huge accomplishment. But we have more work to do. We want to see this from pre-K all the way up to graduation and being able to offer both of these languages and see an expansion at Crestview. And we've got some plans. We don't have enough time today to go through those plans, but invite us back and we'll share them with you. But this is very huge work, because when most of us were in school, our languages weren't offered. And there's a tremendous data throughout Hawaii, New Zealand, even in Wisconsin, showing that native students that learn their language have higher self-actualization. So much so that in Wisconsin, there's students at an Ojibwe immersion school that are tested in English, and repeatedly they've had the highest test scores in the state on standardized tests. And they're learning exclusively through Ojibwe language, but they're able to look at science from an Ojibwe perspective and from an English perspective and figure things out. So it's really a benefit to our students, to our community, to our tribal nations. But also it does place a huge burden on our language teachers, because for Ojibwe and Dakota language, there isn't a set curriculum. You can't just go buy a Houghton Mifflin textbook. You can't find a lot of multimedia on YouTube or on the web. So our teachers are actually working like double time to create the curriculum and then create the assessments to teach the content and then continue it all over again, because there isn't any trailblaze when it comes to teaching our languages in public schools. So really applaud our language teachers and what they're doing. Then I did want to talk very briefly about some of our partnerships and what Tribal Consultation encapsulates. So we also partner with Student Services and Project Dreamcatcher. We were one of the original pilot sites 11 years ago to reduce the overrepresentation of Native students and Black students in special ed. We're seeing a tremendous impact in our partnership with Student Services over the past 2 years. It's really been enhanced. We also partner with an American Indian PBIS cohort at MDE to learn what's going on around the state and how can we implement that across our district with various leaders that have a high American Indian student population. We've also been partnering with Learning and Achievement and the Talented and Gifted Department to create curriculum for all students around Indian education for all in an authentic way. So this try, they're reading trickster stories, learning about some of our cultural stories in lieu of what's often called mythology. To us, they're not myths, but they're factual stories. So they're learning these trickster stories. They're learning the protocols that go with them. They're learning traditional games, traditional values in sports, but they're also learning about cultural revitalization and knowledge of place, because everyone calls Minnesota home, but they need to understand the complex history of the land in which we all occupy today. We've partnered with the Department of Educational Equity to perform professional development for staff. Coming up in about 2 weeks, we've partnered with Nutrition Services, and Nicole's really led this to have Indigenous foods served at the hot lunches of our schools. So the students will be having a bison soup, they'll be having a cornbread with a wojapi, which is a berry sauce pudding, with some information about Indigenous foodways of the Western Hemisphere. So students will be able to taste Indigenous foods. We've also partnered very closely with the Enrollment Center to ensure our American Indian students are accurately identified. Historically, a lot have been missing because there are 2 or more races, and that has erased their Indigenous identity. But now any student that has 2 or more races but has American Indian indicated anywhere is identified as American Indian under our state reporting data, which aligns with the state law. And then recently we've partnered with the Tribal Nations Education Committee for our annual consultation, which has been great. I did want to save some time for our students that are here. Maybe they could come on up and share some of your insights into Indian education.
My name is Shad Morrow. I'm a 10th grader and I go to Park Center.
Hi, my name is Keisha Ramirez. I'm a 12th grader and I go to Park Center.
I'm Diego Tapia Morrow. I'm a 12th grader and I go to Osseo High School.
My name is Justin Kukovic and I'm a sophomore and I go to Park Center.
start. So I guess what Indian Ed is to me is like, I don't know if I push myself the way I do without them behind me. I feel like I've been in the Indian Ed program since elementary school, but Ethan was actually there as my instructor, and I went to drum and dance, and then I feel like at middle school, I didn't go to drum and dance as much anymore, but that's where I met this wonderful people over there by going to Indian Ed and going on field trips and just getting to know myself on a deeper level that isn't always shown and represented in everyday class. And then that transferred over to high school where I was like, I think I really want to take Ojibwe language, and that led me to realizing I actually am passionate about it and I want to pursue it in my future and maybe seek a career in Ojibwe language and helping revitalization effort. And I feel like none of that would have happened if the program wasn't in our district, because in classes, like I remember on Indigenous Peoples Day, there was a presentation that our classes were so close to, and we were like, okay, we're going to do this, but our actual lesson really kind of just grow through it aside. This is something they were required to do. And I remember in elementary school thinking they teach the same thing about Indigenous people every single year, but they're never creating, and it's always about the past, but it's never about today, and that we're still here in the future of it. It's always the same of what happened years ago, which is important to learn, but there's also, we're still here, and there's so much more to know about us than just the pain.
My experience, sorry, I have to read from this. But basically, I had joined Indian Ed at the end of my junior year, so I didn't even know it was like a thing until I saw them like group up every Wednesday, and I was like, wait, what's this? Like, you know what I'm saying? I always saw like Brad's long ponytail or something like that. But it has really helped me and guide me through like building my ethics and morals. Like through the course of me joining, I've been taught like respect, humility, patience, and kindness towards others. But like, I'm a very passionate person, so I get to talking and it just gets a little heated, but they're there to help me like calm down and like process those emotions and think and act in a more dignified way. And then this program has also helped me like reshaping my post-secondary interests. At first, I was telling Bella, the high school advisor, that like I wanted to be a mortician so that I can help the community like hold free funeral services for grieving families. But she helped me like dive deeper into that motivation, and like the staff encouraged me to begin and complete my application to Howard University, which I will be attending in the fall. So yeah, when they asked me to speak here, you know, I was more than grateful to take the opportunity to speak on their behalf of the program, because, you know, they really did help me like find myself and kind of find my purpose.
Alright, yeah, so I've been in Indian education since I was in elementary, and so since I've been elementary, middle school, and high school, I've been in it. And I feel like elementary really like showed me that, because Native people don't really like look alike, it's hard to differentiate them from each other. When I had first got to class and I showed up, it really showed me that like there was people like me around and like with the same cultural background as me, which made me feel like more at home and like more safe in that little group. And that followed through middle school and high school too, especially in high school, because it was like a new environment. You're a freshman, you're like scared, but then you know you can always have like some classes to lean back on and everything that will benefit you too if you need to speak about anything to them. And in elementary, I had tried traditional lacrosse for the first time, which really showed me that I like playing that sport, and that helped me pick up modern lacrosse, which is an expensive sport, like everything. So I didn't know if I really wanted to stick with it or anything, but thankfully after speaking to my high school advisor Bella, she was able to help me get some funding to get the gear and everything, do that, and that was able to let me play lacrosse. So then I was able to play good with good gear and everything, and now I'm able to attending college to play Division II lacrosse. Thanks for giving me Now I feel like I didn't know I wanted to go to college at first. I thought I was gonna go to trades, but ever going like to TCUs or going like NDSU or visiting tribal colleges, it showed me that like there's more to college than just schools, like sports. There's different, like a different lifestyle. It's like a different community than what I'm used to, and I feel like it'd be good just trying to like live out that life and see how it is. So that's how it's supported me.
I've been in Indian Ed since my 8th grade year, so I haven't really like been around it because in middle school I went to Jackson for my 6th grade and 7th grade year, and that's not a very good district for Indian Ed and all that. So when I got like my first pass to go to Indian, I was like, oh, what's this? And then I got there and I'm not really sure what we were learning about that day, but it was good to see a whole bunch of people like showing up and seeing that there was people like me, and I could like learn from them and with them about stuff. And once I got to high school and I wanted that first TCU, I met a lot of new people, made new friends that are probably going to be some of my friends for a long time. And it's been helping me with my classics, especially talking to Bella about how I can get help and how she's helped me, and all of our other teachers have helped me through all this stuff. Like in feeding club, going there after practices or whatever, just having community around, learning something traditional that we've been doing for a long time. And it's been real helpful, and especially with traditional lacrosse, it's a good way to get kids active. I wouldn't say it's super hard to learn, and a lot of the other stuff, like there was I think 2 years ago or last year, we had like a tournament kind of thing with traditional lacrosse that was, not a whole lot of people came to it, but it was a fun little thing to just do with like your community. A whole lot of high schoolers and a couple other people came out. We did like respect to elders and everything, and it was just a really good time.
Thank you.
So lastly, looking ahead, looking to the future, what we'd like to see from the district is just increased visibility of Native students and accurate data reporting. A lot of times our students are hidden under 2 or more races, or the current information systems don't accurately identify American Indian students, so how can we tighten that up as a district? We'd like to see increased cultural supports or American Indian language and culture specialists, increased native language programming, also increasing our recruitment and retention of American Indian staff. We've heard of the importance of having an Indian education team, but also we're significantly underrepresented across the district in just general staff. I think we're 0.4 of 1% of the staff, but we're over 2.5% of the student base. So if we could get 5 times more native staff, we could be a little equitable in those numbers. Additionally, increasing professional development specifically for teachers and also for administrators. A lot of times when we're doing professional development for teachers, the value is lost, and oftentimes it needs to come from their administrator or their supervisor, coaching them on the importance of incorporating this into the curriculum to not just uplift Native students, but uplift all students about what we're doing here, where we are, knowledge of self and knowledge of place. And so these are some of the requests of our community, our students, staff, and APAC. And I'll just say, Pira Mayapi, which
Thank you. Who wants to start?
Question, Tom. First of all, I'm so inspired by all 4 of your unique stories. Very inspiring. And I just have a question, Ethan, earlier when you talked about the intergenerational experiential learning, I'd love to hear like an example, or from the students, how does that impact your academic growth, just your experience with success. And so either from Ethan or if any of you, I'm just really intrigued by the intergenerational
Yeah, I
part.
can give you a quick one. So like our language tables, it's not just the students learning the language, oftentimes it's parents learning alongside or kids that are yet to be enrolled in the school. So because a lot of our parents and grandparents are survivors of residential schools and boarding schools, a lot of times the parent generation doesn't speak the language in the home. And so we're often modeling ways to integrate language acquisition in the home, also in the community, because the classroom is really the last facet for the language. It needs to exist in the home and community for it to have relevance. And as we've heard today, the students start to take it home. They start to use that when they're eating or preparing a meal or interacting with each other, or even addressing their relatives, using the appropriate relative terms. Some of the other things that we've done, some different trips over the years. It's been a while since we've done some. We took families to Pipestone, which is a sacred site to a lot of indigenous people of the Great Lakes region. We went out to Prairie Island Buffalo Farm one year, the Lower Sioux historic site at the Chanshayapi, the place they paint the trees red. And so a lot of times this intergenerational learning occurs on the weekends or in the evenings. Beading Club is another place where you'll see families, grandparents alongside the students learning. And so pretty much everything is open to all generations. We don't want to just differentiate by age. So that's one of the things that's unique about Indian education. You might have elementary learning taking place at the same time as high school, but they're learning at different levels, of course. And so the way it's scaffolded looks different than a traditional Western classroom. But all of our programming and events are open to all ages. Also, if you ever attend the annual powwow, you'll see we have tiny tots, which are as young as the ones that can walk, 2 or 3 years old. Then we also have the golden age, the elder categories. And so you'll see the entire community represented at these types of community learning events.
Well, I just have to say, I was completely blown away at TNEC. I mean, that was, this is my second term on this board, and to your point, I mean, it's really evolved in a way across the district to really support our Indian Ed, our American Indian students, and APEC. And and I've been fortunate enough to be talking to Ethan while I've been the APEC rep this year, and I was just so excited for the board to really hear the vision, because it's aspirational, it's exciting, and it's inspiring, and it kind of breaks the mold. And we really heard that at TNEC too. There was a lot of support around the work. I think that, when I think about, expanding the, immersion for the languages, like K through, throughout the duration of our K-12 education, I mean, I just think it's so powerful, it's so timely. I think that it seems with Indian Ed, we're at a really pivotal moment that as a board, I think we need to really we need to be talking to say, how do we strategically invest? How do we solidify being the leaders in the state across the country? And how do we know that, and what we've heard around invisibility, like we want to ensure our American Indian students are very visible in our district. We're so proud. And I think some of my questions and kind of wonderings for our district are around, sorry, I'm like looking at all my notes. I have so many notes right here. Around the language immersion, around the value of, oh my gosh, going to the tribal colleges. My daughter goes to Howard. She's a junior, so we can talk about that. And I know for my family, my daughter attending Maple Grove, but then having the opportunity to go to Howard has been life-changing for her. It's been transformational in terms of when you're with your heritage, your community. It's the most uplifting experience that you could ever have in life. It's beyond academics. It's to know who you are and have that confidence to just thrive in life. And there's like nothing stopping you after that, and it's so powerful. Some of the things I learned during TNEC was around some of the funds. I think it was the DNR, was that what it?
Yes.
Yeah, and there was some conversation around that and education. We got sent some information about that, and so I'm not for right now, but I'm really curious about how our district utilizes that funding. I am really interested of how do we elevate Indian Ed from a program to really being visible in the district, what that looks like. I am, sorry, I'm looking at my notes again. Anyways, I'll probably have some more questions, maybe not, because I know we have a timekeeper over here. So, but anyways, I just want to say that the work that has been done, it can model so many different areas within our district, and I am so proud to serve in this district. That moment was just, it was just a moment of pride for Osseo schools, and like listening to you, you four. Thank you for being here, to hear your experiences, to hear your trajectory in life, because of being in a community that's supporting, and I think it's also like a true testament to what community engagement is. You know, I mean, it's like it's involving our families, it's involving elders, it's involving other districts around the state, and this just blows me away, and I'm just so excited for what we as a board can really be strategic and invest in.
You kind of spoke for all of us, really. Although I would say, I remember, I think my first year on the board, TNEC was like horrifying. It was a horrifying experience. So to see the support, and Ethan, you've been here the whole time, and we've had leaders invest in this over time, and I know the board has supported the work. So now with the Crestview site, I think we really do have that opportunity to continue to invest, accelerate, and lead in Minnesota with the program. So I'm so happy to see how far we've come since that time, and it was great to hear what the exciting report that you had after you attended. And so just thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories, and we continue to I think I can speak for everyone that we are continuing to prioritize this effort and the funding and the needs for it.
The other thing that I think that I learned at TNEC was our relationship with Brooklyn Center Schools, and how we partner and coordinate in terms of our Indian ed work and our Native American students at Brooklyn Center, and I think that's really great to highlight that I didn't know about.
Yeah, I mean, I too just wanted to thank, especially the students, for being here today, taking the extra time. It's so important, and we love hearing from students anytime. I also just wanted to shout out Bella, who was like the star of the show today. So thank you
She
for all
goes,
of
I'll
your
look for that race tomorrow.
I mean, I don't know if you put them up to it or not, but thank you nonetheless for all of your work, and Ethan, as always, for everything that you're doing. My big takeaway from the presentation was just the emphasis on increased visibility, both for our students, particularly those that are underrepresented, particularly in the data, but also, as one of the parents mentioned, how we continue to elevate and invest in the program, and particularly Ethan and all of the staff, the vision of continuing to be a leader and elevating ourselves as leaders in the state, how we kind of solidify that vision of an American Indian department. I want to hear more about that at some point. Kind of what that would look like, and how that would better empower, Ethan, staff, and our students. And so, I don't know, maybe that's a takeaway for, I guess, all staff in the room, is I would love to hear more about that vision and how we could potentially make that a reality over time. I appreciated, we've talked a lot about AVID here with the board, and I appreciated that emphasis on making sure that we are broadening our students' perspectives beyond our district, and really getting them to connect with what life could be like outside of here. The school districts, the school visits are always incredibly important to make that next phase of learning, I guess, more practical. But I guess I was wondering if is there a natural connection to AVID with our American Indian program? Are there principles that have been taken from that have been supportive? Are there ways that we can continue to support that effort and making sure that, we are providing those college and career pathways for particularly our American Indian students?
Yeah, currently it's all been through just our Indian education program and funding, but we'd love to partner more with Abbott and find ways that we can enhance this type of offering to students.
I guess the other question I had a long list of questions, but I can maybe stop at this one. So Ethan, please feel free to answer this one, or if one of the parents want to jump in. It was mentioned that we could be a leader, and I know that we've always seen ourselves as leaders, but I guess I'm wondering what's holding us back from being that leader that we aspire to be in the state.
I think that I've just seen like both sides. Like there was just a huge disconnect before, and it's like now the district is starting to come together with Indian Ed, and it's becoming one. And I just think like you could be, or we all could be an example to the state, like, and what can be done when we are solid partners and working together for the kids.
Yeah, I think one thing that might hold us back is the mindset of the majority of educators in our district. I was talking with Jill, our middle school specialist, prior to this meeting, and she was mentioning how some of the staff will greet her with Buju and use the Ojibwe language, and how welcoming that makes her feel as a Ojibwe woman to hear her language used in the school, have teachers that are greeting our students that way. But a lot of the current mindset of the teachers, they've been raised in Western school systems, so they don't really know much about Native students or Native people in general. So learning how to build relationships with, in particular with the Native community, I think could be very helpful for our educators as well as our administrators. And I think it kind of has to trickle down from the admin. So I think that increase in professional development, particularly in partnership with American Indian Education, is crucial to building those connections and relationships with our students and families.
Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, thank you again. I know we've been looking forward to this presentation for a while, so thank you, Ethan, and students, and everyone.
You would have been proud because you said it was
All right, as we have our next group setting up, welcome. Our next topic, we're going to go over technology use in our district, and we're going to have Anthony, if you want to introduce your team that you brought this evening, please.
Good evening, school board members, cabinet colleagues, and community members. Tonight our team will share how education technology is used to support teaching and learning in Osseo area schools. While student technology use is broad and often complex topic, our focus this evening is specific, how technology is used for learning in our schools. With that context, I'll invite our team to introduce themselves as we begin our conversation.
Great, good evening. Andy Bedot, and I'm the digital learning coordinator for the district.
Ryan Cox, Director of Technology.
Joanna Art, Coordinator of Technology. Becky Fritz, Digital Learning Specialist, Secondary.
I'm Tanya Wampels. I'm a EL teacher at Brick Center.
Tonight we aim to build a shared understanding of how technology supports learning and to share the current reality of student technology use in Osseo area schools. It's important to clarify what we mean by education technology. Education technology refers to tools that are intentionally used to support teaching and learning. These tools align to curriculum expectations and help students develop skills demonstrate understanding, and engage in meaningful learning. General technology, on the other hand, includes everyday tools like social media, streaming, gaming, or web browsing, which are designed primarily for communication, entertainment, or convenience. While both involve screens and devices, the purpose is different. Tonight, our focus is specifically on how technology is used intentionally in classrooms to support learning. This is our digital learning vision, and it's been guiding our work for several years. The vision was developed in the 17-18 school year through a community process that included parents, students, staff, and community members as part of a comprehensive review of our personalized learning plan, known as DL4A. At its core, the vision emphasizes using technology to support more personalized learning by path, place, and pace, while strengthening teaching and learning practices that help students succeed. Technology is not the goal, learning is the goal. The vision continues to guide our decisions from how technology is used in classrooms to how environments are designed, including work like building a better future. It serves as an anchor to keep our focus on student learning, not devices or trend. It's also important to ground our shared definition of digital equity, developed with staff, students, and community members through our District Technology Advisory Committee and aligned with the Federal Digital Equity Act of 2021. At its core, digital equity means ensuring every student has the access, skills, and support needed to fully participate in learning in the digital world. That includes access to technology along with the guidance to use it effectively and responsibly. This definition matters because it guides continuous improvement in how we plan, assess, and adjust our use of education technology to better support students and families. It's important to clarify that access does not mean students have devices with them all the time. One-to-one means students have access when learning requires it. For example, in grades K through 5, devices are cart-based, used at the direction and discretion of the teacher, and rarely go home. Technology use in Osceola schools is intentionally aligned with expectations our schools are required to meet. At the state level, the Minnesota English Language Arts Standards require media literacy across grades K through 12, including evaluating digital information, understanding digital media, and communicating using multimedia. Technology is also essential for progress monitoring and state assessments, many of which are delivered digitally. At the national level, federal guidance signals that AI literacy will increasingly be an expectation for K-12 schools. Together, these factors reinforce why our approach to education technology is intentional, focused on instruction, assessment, and student readiness. The last time the board received a full update on digital learning was in 2021, so it's helpful to briefly revisit how this work began. In the 17-18 school year, the district focused on planning, refreshing our personalized learning framework, developing an implementation roadmap, and piloting technology at the secondary level. From there, the work expanded in intentional phases across grade levels, allowing for learning and adjustment while keeping a consistent focus on using technology purposely to support teaching and learning and align with our shared vision. As the initial phase work matured, the focus shifted into continuous improvement. In recent years, rather than large-scale rollouts, the work has centered on regularly revisiting teaching and learning practices, strengthening family learning opportunities, and expanding online programming where appropriate. The key takeaway is that technology integration in Osceola schools has been intentional and gradual, guided by our learning vision and adjusted over time to better support student success. Caregiver awareness and partnership are an important part of technology use in our schools. Families play a key role, and we want to be clear about how that works in Osceola schools. Families may request to opt their child out of using a school-issued device by working directly with the school. The district also publicly lists core instructional tools such as Seesaw and Schoology, which support learning across classrooms. Teachers may also use classroom-specific digital resources. These are communicated by teachers to families, and caregivers may request to opt out of those tools. One example of these tools is Epic. School-issued devices are filtered for safety, and families are encouraged to set expectations at home. Overall, the goal is transparency and strong partnership that supports student learning. These graphics are from this year's Morris Leatherman survey of Osceola schools' families and provides us with a satellite data perspective. Parents consistently indicate that it's highly important for schools to help students develop digital literacy skills that prepare them for college, career, and life beyond schools. At the same time, families also expressed concern about screen time. Together, these results reinforce the need for intentional use of technology, supporting learning and skill development while being thoughtful about balance and how students engage with screens. I'll now hand it over to Andy Bedell, who, along with the rest of this amazing team, will dig into the map and street data around education technology use in Osseo area schools.
Thank you, Anthony. So our focus, as Anthony mentioned, isn't on, I'm gonna have to figure out how to use this clicker. Left to right. Okay, had to have my little tutorial. Okay, so again, as Anthony mentioned, our focus isn't just on adapting technology for the sake of adopting technology, but rather to improve student learning outcomes by personalizing the student experience through the 3 Ps. So with PATH, teachers can adapt instruction to offer multiple ways for students to learn and show what they know. Through PACE, digital resources allow students the flexibility to revisit challenging material or move ahead when they are ready. And through PLACE, connectivity expands the classroom beyond the 4 walls, making learning accessible whenever and wherever the student is. So our goal is to empower students as creators as they are moving towards and what that looks like in the classroom. So as creative production, students use digital tools to design, write, and build original projects rather than just watching or consuming content. Critical thinking, students go beyond Googling answers to analyze information and tackle real-life challenges. Active engagement, we are replacing passive activities with hands-on challenges designed to foster student engagement. And through collaborative innovation, we use technology to help students collaborate and work together rather than in isolation or alone. And now I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you. As you can see here, in this bar graph, in Osseo, we intentionally, strategically implement the use of technology across our high-quality core instruction at the direction of teachers at varying levels. Our littlest learners experience the fewest number of minutes of device use per day, while that time increases as kids engage more deeply in their content in their classrooms. Osseo is experiencing, we do use our devices intentionally, which is, as you can see, fewer minutes than the national average. This bar graph shows that our littlest learners, again, are using their core one-to-one devices intentionally, and this plays out with our kindergartners and third graders using their devices 2 to 3 days per week for about 20 to 30 minutes maximum per day. So it's not every day and not all day.
Where's this data coming from? How is it calculated?
So this data actually comes from our relay filtering tool. So there's an agent on every single one of our devices that captures the actual screen data on all of our devices. The K through 3 data in particular on days of the week, we worked with building principals and actually gathered that from every one of our K through 3 teachers in the system.
As Anthony and Andy mentioned, our elementary scholars have devices that live in carts and they're pulled out at teacher discretion. This data represents our 4th through 12th graders, but truly it represents our secondary scholars who bring their devices home more regularly. And the bulk of the instructional time on the devices is during the instructional day, between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. The green represents staff-directed educational activity, and the light gray represents other activities during that time. And then, last, again, our data supports that our scholars are using the devices during the week for educational activity. This data, again, represents our 4th through 12th graders on our Chromebooks. Again, our 4th and 5th graders typically leave their devices at school every single night in their classrooms. They do occasionally bring them home, but this data represents our secondary scholars and their data use. In Osseo, we are intentional, we are specific, and it is tied to high quality core instructional use.
Here we're looking at how online activity is characterized from a national perspective as compared to how we look at it here in auxiliary schools. At the national level, it's the graph to the right, with yellow and gray. Activity is broadly grouped into just two buckets, education-related and not education-related. That high-level view is helpful for big picture comparisons, but it doesn't give much insight into how instructional time is actually being used. In our district, we intentionally take a more detailed approach. Instead of treating all educational activity as one category, we break it into three distinct types: educational applications, instructional video resources, and informational web searches. This allows us to better understand student learning behaviors, instructional practices, and the balance between structured learning tools and more open-ended exploration. The advantage of taking a more detailed approach is we get clear, more actionable information that can help inform both instructional and operational decisions, digital resource use, and conversations around the effective use of technology in our classrooms. Like most other school districts, Auxiliary Schools integrates a number of digital resources to support learning and teaching. This slide is showing some of the more widely used applications that have been used this school year, and more importantly, how these tools function within our overall instructional environment. While this graphic shows a wide range of digital tools, it's important to recognize that not all of these applications serve the same role. Some are used consistently across classrooms, while others vary based on grade level, content area, or instructional approach. In our district, we identify Schoology, bottom left, Google Workspace for Education, right next to that one, Seesaw, next to that, Clever, C in the upper left corner, and Amplify, bottom right, as examples of core instructional applications. These are the platforms students interact with on a regular basis. They support the structure of teaching and learning through assignments, curriculum resources, communication, collaboration, and feedback. The remaining applications, such as YouTube, FastBridge, or Aqua Arrow, Bookit, the B, and Kahoot and others, are used more flexibly. They support specific instructional purposes like assessment, content delivery, engagement, or access to resources, but their usage can look different from one classroom to the next. The advantage of understanding this distinction is that it gives us a clearer picture of both consistency and flexibility in our digital ecosystem. We can ensure a strong, reliable core for instruction, while also supporting teachers and using a range of tools to meet the diverse needs of their students.
One thing that I'll quickly highlight on this slide, for years, Spotify or music programs have not shown up in our top 10. It's been very evident that with the cell phone ban, students wanting to access music while they're studying and doing other activities, this is now showing up in their school-issued device usage. So it's just something that we're observing, a trend that has not been a part of what we've seen historically in our district-issued devices.
So the question is, how do students use technology for learning in our district? Ryan and Johanna gave us the satellite view, the big picture trends. To understand their progress, we have to zoom in just as Saphir and Dugan describe in their work streak data. We need to look at what is actually happening inside of our classrooms, the daily work and stories of our students. The slides I'm going to share now are the evidence of that real-world thinking. We'll begin by showing a video of learning in our elementary schools.
So I think that's the most exciting part, that the technology has changed dramatically, where I used to do a little bit more, or the parent volunteers a little bit more. But now when we had the one iPad classroom, I could show a few things and they could do a few things with technology, and maybe do a little bit of like labeling with the iPad. But when they have an iPad in their own hand, it's limitless. The possibilities are limitless, including that they're learning to do things like voice to text and import images and borders and just doing the copy, paste, just searching for different types of things. So to me, their creativity has just blossomed so much. Plus, they're such good problem solvers compared to me. So that collaboration is much more evident because somebody in the room has probably already figured out something that I haven't figured out, and they can explain it in their second grade.
These third graders, and really trying to find ways to give them access to show their knowledge and just to show their understanding of what we were learning. Writing was a challenge for a lot of them. The Adobe Express provided them with the ability to be able to communicate and to express their knowledge. Several of my students were using the speech to text feature in Adobe. That was really powerful because they could use their verbal strength and talk what they wanted to say, type their words out. So something like that, we allowed them to, they were showing me what they knew and being able to fully participate and engage in this final product that they were creating.
Then, once they did their research and they had all of the information they needed, their task was to create a script for a podcast. So they were partnered up and they each had a different constellation, and they were basically just kind of debating in a healthy debating which constellation was better.
The following are examples from classrooms across the district. In this assignment, 10th grade English students pair literary quotes with personal images, analyzing complex themes through a lens that they already understand. In this math example, a student is using a screencast to explain the logic behind parabolas. This requires them to move beyond just solving a problem on paper to actually chewing on the concept so that they can teach it to someone else. In this example, I think Ellen goes the best. In this example, 8th grade students at Park Center manipulate shapes to build webs of meaning, debating and justifying complex cause and effect relationships in their own words. We believe in using the best tool for the job. Many secondary math teachers are moving beyond codebooks to building thinking classrooms and strategies, using markers and vertical surfaces to make learning visible and foster face-to-face collaboration. In an online environment, it can be a challenge to have students work together on tough math problems in real time. Digital whiteboards solve the remote collaboration challenge, allowing the entire class to work on one canvas while the teacher monitors the thinking in real time. For early learners, writing can be a hurdle. On our district's Asynchronous Learning Day, Seesaw's photo and voice recording tools allowed students to explain complex thoughts verbally and visually. In this example, 5th graders studied soil health and then designed infographics to visualize their learning for their STEAM Fest. 6th grade ELA students at OMS created a bento box to represent a character from Fever 1793 by selecting objects and using voice recordings to justify their choices with text evidence. For our Hmong Heritage students, the traveling unit is all about making learning personal. They use Google Maps to plot out the places that matter to them, then mapping their own family travels. Then they presented their maps in class using the Hmong language to tell the story of the trip, where they went, the method of travel, and what made those places special. We also have a video showcasing learning in our secondary classrooms.
Hello everyone, my name is Mohammed.
Hi, my name is Fatima.
My name is Edison.
My name is Asia.
My name is Jorge.
My name is Ophelia. My name is Sophie. My name is Sansan.
My name is Nguyen Pham, and I'm teaching ELD classes. Most of them are level 1, meaning that they are just the beginners. They just arrived in the country, some of them just arrived this year. So they started to learn English the beginning of the school year. I know that many of them wanted to participate in the classroom. Many of them feel more comfortable recording themselves, reading, speaking, and submitting the work.
Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a great boxer. Many people said he was the best in the world.
Can you see the wind? It is waiting the frog and the fall.
The story is about a group of best friends called Lily, Maya, and Chloe. They love spending their summer days together.
Technology is an advantage that teachers can use in their classroom, and it is the way that make my lesson more relevant for their interests. Technology helps students to improve their learning.
We assign them a scene, they need to rewrite it, make it contemporary, make choices in the setting, and then they create finger puppets, and then they videotape it. So they're making musical choices to reflect the mood, they're doing things with the costuming and the set, as well as the language. So all of that coming together in their video is quite unique and shows some real depth of thinking.
What do you mean? They will tell the castle to awaken. They said sleep no more. They know what I've done. Who said that?
One positive of use multilanguage when you speak is that you can make sense of new words and grammar rules. For example, you can use words like prefer in French to learn the words prefer in English.
Hi guys, today we are gonna learn about dry out. So come, let's do this.
Doing it wasn't that easy because we gotta talk and then put music on it, put pictures, which was a lot of things to do. And it was also a challenge because it's our first time doing it, so we're kind of like, a little bit nervous, kind of like that, like asking her a lot of questions because we really want to get into it, like know what we're doing and how to add the, especially for the voice recording, how to add it and add the music. I'm learning now. Now I know I can help all these people. That was so great, and I feel so good just sitting there. Yeah. I think we should do it more and then encourage people to do more stuff like that because it was actually pretty fun, and then I would love to do it again if I can. But yeah, well, time is passing.
Finally, I'm honored to introduce an amazing teacher who we asked to join us tonight and graciously accepted to spend her evening with us on her birthday to talk about how technology supports student learning in her classroom. One more time, it's okay.
Yeah, so when those students were saying we had to ask her a lot of questions, they were referring to me. So I teach high school EL 3, level 3. They're more intermediate language speakers. And when I was in high school, one of my favorite activities was making video presentations for my teachers and also my classmates to, not only learn something from me, but also I tried to make them laugh, or I tried to make them something I especially felt I couldn't do, like if I were standing up in front of the classroom. I felt it was a lot easier to do those sorts of things to entertain my peers while also informing them in a video. So I wanted to allow, to have my students do this. You might have seen Alicia Tamura, it was just before my two students who were talking. She had kind of introduced them to Adobe Express the previous year, but I wanted to expand on it, and so we had a project that was them creating a PSA commercial about climate change, which was one of our units in our issues curriculum. The unit, at the end, it one of the key language aspects was inform. And so, instead of them writing an informational paragraph, we were like, oh, well, PSAs are meant to inform. So the students did that as well. I think it was important to engage them in creating like a commercial by analyzing what makes a successful commercial, what makes successful humor in a commercial, what draws people in, and then I kind of let them run with it. This project, I encouraged them to be, kind of a little bit more silly. Of course, they had parameters, they had things that they were supposed to, show in their commercial. They had to have music, they had to have visuals, they had to have a clear call to action at the end, like, okay, what do they want people to do? Why did they inform them about this? And they did just a really good job with it. I will say at the time, it was during a time where a lot of students had to be at home for many different reasons. And a lot of the students were feeling like kind of separated from each other. I mean, they were physically separated from each other, but also in terms of, like a community, right, is kind of broken up during that time. I would have 4 students in the classroom and 10 students online. And so having a digital project where they could create something that everyone could watch and be a part of was just important in that moment. I was impressed with how many students tried to make their peers laugh and succeeded, and I think it really did kind of bring the students together. One, issue we had at the beginning of the year is the class. They had been together in a lot of classes, and sometimes they had had some arguments over, over the past few years. And to seeing them like create something that they actually, all of them kind of enjoyed, I think made it, just made them come together a little bit more. Aside from social emotional, I think our school is currently, like this year, has been doing something called What's on Deck, where a video is put out for the whole school to watch once a week, put on by kind of like a journalism club in the school. And my hope is that some of my English learner students can get involved in something like that and feel really confident to be able to join in on clubs. One concern we always have too with English language learners is this idea of like segregation from the greater school community. And so having these projects that can, be shared is just can be really powerful for integrating, students and making them feel like they're part of Park Center or wherever school they go to. So that's what we did.
Thank you. And with that, we'll actually turn it over for questions. So gave you some of that historical context, knowing that when I was processing through this, I think Tanya and Kelsey, you were the last 2 to hear a digital learning presentation with this board. And
weren't we at Park Center?
We might have been.
Oh. I remember that one conversation was like so long. Like we went like way.
Yeah, it was. And I know Keith for many years was on DTAC, so I mean he's gotten some pieces. But for many of you, grounding in the context of where our vision is at, what's been the intentionality around the alignment of professional development and the work that teaching and learning does as they align their curriculum and content with the use of the resources that are available. It's really the core goal, as well as kind of sharing that data of what is practically and actually being used within our schools. So with that, I'll hand it over to the Vice Chair to facilitate questions.
Thank you. School board members, questions?
I have a couple of questions. Can you clarify, Anthony, there were some questions about the opt-out process for families that, if they are interested in doing that, is that like proactively communicated at, entering in kindergarten, or how, if you can just give some clarity?
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily proactively communicated. It's part of our regular curricular resource opt-out process. So when families want to opt out of a particular curricular resource, they go through the building to to navigate that process. And we have had families that have gone to their building leadership and wanted an opt-out, and we've worked through that and what alternatives look like for supporting the students.
Okay, so it kind of needs to be pursued by families, it's not like communicated directly. Okay, and then another question with an app like YouTube, what are kind of the, can you explain for families to know like the guardrails or parameters for?
Sure. So YouTube in a school setting like with the Google Workspace for Education we have here, it's not your typical YouTube. There's actual settings based on grade levels. So for our elementary students, YouTube is at the highest restriction level that's available within Google Workspace. It's called strict. And then as you work your way up to secondary, it actually stays at moderate, that 13 plus moderate area. So when students are interacting with their school device, either at home or at school, it's going through that moderation process. So it's not just any YouTube, it's actually that more strict or moderate level of moderation.
On top of that, our filtering also provides filtering within YouTube. All filtering tools they're not perfect, they're not impenetrable. It's based on how content is classified and you know what the creators put in there. Creators nowadays are supposed to classify content as being 13 or 18 plus, but we know that's not always perfect. So in addition to what Ryan shared in the settings, our filtering tool also does some additional layers of filtering within the YouTube space.
And what about parameters if students take their device home? I mean, I know in the podcast that you sent us, it was talking about, you know, how sleep is important and all that. Do they have access unlimited to that at any time of day, or how is that?
Yeah, so the filtering rules and settings apply universally 24 hours, whether they're on campus or off campus. In terms of time limits or restrictions, there's not a time when the device just shuts off and is inaccessible. So that's where we really encourage partnership with our families, thinking about what are those rules that you have in place around those conversations with personal devices, and apply those same kind of home rules and values to the school district issued device as well.
And then just one more question about evaluating, just kind of going forward, or like, do we have data evaluating the effectiveness, that's showing that student outcomes are improving? Is that something we have data, or we're pursuing as our rhythm going forward?
I will say the last time we looked at that data, I know Tanya, you were on the board, we had a promising practices study that actually looked at when technology is being utilized through the vision and the digital learning plan around path, place, and pace, and the intentionality that we framed out, we were and have been seeing positive outcomes coming within those classroom spaces with that intentional use. That was back in 2021 when we last ran that promising practices study, as different configurations have occurred within the data and assessment team, and we focused on different areas. We haven't come back to continue to reevaluate within that study, but we have had evidence, positive impact evidence.
And that was wider than technology. It was on instructional practices,
Yes.
not just technology.
And is that something going forward that we can ensure families that we will be pursuing
Yeah,
data?
that's something we've talked about, and we'll definitely take note on how we continue to reevaluate and pull that data in.
Yeah, that'd be great to hear. Thank you.
Regarding Sarah's question about the opt-out, do we have numbers on how many folks are opting out?
Not that I'm aware of. It's pretty small if we do, from what I'm aware of.
On that same question, if parents were to opt a student out, how does that impact that student's experience and their educational outcomes? Like, are they getting the same education as students that still have access to that device? How's that been working?
That's a great question. We don't have data on hand, kind of looking at that. I will say, as families have come and engaged this conversation with building leaders, I know they deeply dig into that conversation, which is where we often don't see a family fully opt out. They talk about different processes and plans about what that device use looks like in school. We've got middle school students in particular that are on plans where the device doesn't go home, it stays at school. We've got a tool called Relay Classroom where teachers can add additional rules and lock screens on certain pages or applications that I know with some of our individual students that our buildings are partnered with, like they'll have a plan working with the teachers where the device is still used but tightly restricted in what that use might look like within those classroom spaces. It happens very similar to like an IEP plan. So it's a conversation with the building leadership and with the teachers on how to best support the student within that space, if they're going to restrict, or if they do go to a full opt-out, what that actually looks like in terms of practice within the classroom and alternative resources that they may be accessing.
I think we need to focus on intentional use. So it's a difference between a parent saying opt-out with choice time versus opt-out with an actual lessons that's attached to something that they need. So I think that's something that we would need to look into.
Anthony, the relay, is that also the teacher can see in real time, right, what the students are doing on each of their screens?
Yeah, they can see all the screens. They can shut tabs off of students. They can take them out of applications.
And I'd be curious if that's overwhelming for teachers to manage that on top of teaching. I do think, I appreciate you being here tonight, and I love the examples and that they were integrated into the lessons. I am curious how technology, when it in some ways replaces teachers in the classroom, and if we are evaluating and being intentional about evaluating how our tech is used. I've just heard examples anecdotally of YouTube videos being used instead of the teacher teaching, and I was, even as I was thinking that through, I'm like, okay, well my teacher used videos too, but I think it's, if all of the curriculum is and the teaching is done via video, I just feel like our students aren't getting the best outcomes. And I know our teachers are fabulous and they have great skills, so I would prefer teachers to be teaching, not our YouTube videos. But again, that's anecdotal, so I think it's something that I'd be curious about, and just getting more information about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
One thing I would say is, to what Dr. Hiles was mentioning before, is the intentional use of video-based lessons. Well, we always want our teachers. I'm a former teacher. I'm not the blinky light in the closet kind of person. I'm a former educator, former classroom teacher. We do want our teachers with our students, obviously, and that's super important. The part where when video is intentionally used, it does allow the students to move at that pace and that place and pace that really can be valuable. For example, I taught social studies back in my day, and if a student is in an economics lesson and they're examining paradox of value, an economic concept, and it's something that clicks with them, they can move through that video at a pace that really works for them. Let's say that the student next to that student who's doing just fine is like, boy, I'm just not getting this. This is not making sense to me. One of the advantages of having access to video resources when intentionally used is that student can pause that video, can rewind back and go back and listen to that again, or can confer with someone and say, did I hear that part right? Is that what paradox is? Yeah, that's what it means. So having that ability to review that, to really personalize and specialize for each student has such value with learning. Obviously not taking the place of that teacher doing the overall lesson, but those mini lessons, those mini units, the mini concepts. Math is really a big one for that kind of practice because we all learn math differently at different paces. And so that ability to pause it, go back, like, oh, you know what, differentiation, not quite there yet, gotta back it up, do it again. There's some value with that.
Can I ask, in your research, because you guys are obviously well studied in this, about some of the examples I've heard on math is like you have it on the iPad, or the Chromebook, I'm sorry, and you're doing it all on there versus having to actually write it out. And like as a math person, I had to be a writer-outer. So I'm curious if there's been any studies about how learning is impacted by doing it on a screen and like using a mouse or the keypad versus writing.
I would say when you look at the studies, it all comes back to two things. One, intentional use, and two, technology can't replace a high-quality instructor and providing core instruction. I think what we see in best-case scenarios where there is positive impact, it's a blend. It's not all on screens or all on paper. It's, again, having thoughtful, intentional use. And this team has heard from the vision for several years now, and as we've led professional development, as we talk about path, place, and pace, it's never been about technology. We can create path, place, and pace without tech, but tech can also enhance and add value. So as we've worked with teachers and as we reset this, so one-to-one devices rolled out in 14-15, and the focus was all on one-to-one devices and technology. When we reset in 17-18, it was about instructional pedagogy and focusing on what is the instructional goal and the learning target, and is technology going to enhance and support that? If not, don't use it. A worksheet on an iPad or a Chromebook is the same as a worksheet with paper and pencil. You're not going to see any different instructional gain from that, so that's just using technology for technology's sake.
Even in I get what you're saying. Got it.
Correct.
So the absorption, there's no difference in studies that we've seen.
I'll just add, so at our elementary level, we use the Bridges for Math curriculum, and that's a workbook for students. There was no digital access. For secondary students, it's CPM. And I know Becky had one of the examples where that really has been a shift in the last few years, where it's much more collaborative and problem solving. So the idea is that students are working together, they're actually working on whiteboards around the classroom, and then maybe the digital piece is submitting homework through Schoology. So I think as well, technology is, we don't want to pigeonhole students into just only doing print or doing digital. We really want them to find the path that's going to be right for them. Some students might really hang on to print. Some really might like voice to text because they're a language learner, and that's going to be the way they can access the standards at their grade level and still be able to continue their learning.
And then my last question, sorry. For our younger learners, the K through 2, or even K through 3, what apps are they using? What are the primary apps they're using, not across the board? What are they using it for?
So our core apps would be like Seesaw, Amplify. Our social studies math curriculum are not digital based. They'll be using the apps that are built into the iPad, and then we would have other levels, teacher discretion, where they're using apps that they're choosing to bring in to supplement.
So like breakout activities, and then like doing an assignment, taking a picture of it, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say at our elementary level, like Seesaw really is that place where they can demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways, whether it's audio, video. Okay. Right.
So Andy, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you know what type of apps they use for choice time? I know it's not all consistent, but do you have any idea?
Choice time, anecdotally, I've heard, some apps are for reading apps, some are for coding apps, things like that.
Okay.
And I think to Anthony's point, teachers can have that, bring in those apps, but it's really important that they notify parents about what they're doing so that parents understand what the outcome is. I would not support the use of apps for free time, for rewards, things like that, because we really want it to be the learning is the outcome.
And my question is is that our standard? Because I think that's great. I agree with that 100%. Have we standardized that in our district, or has that been stated? Does that make sense?
That has been stated, and that's
Yeah.
been how it's framed through professional development. I think, as we've been reflecting and building out the AI procedures that are going to go with our guiding principles that we released 2 years ago, I think we have an opportunity to think about a reset and reframing around just instructional technology procedures as well that might help to reinforce and restate that again. In terms of the classroom applications like Andy shared, we do message out to educators at the beginning of every year, reminder, here's the process around instructional technology. Those classroom applications that are not part of the core instruction, here's the template letter that you can send home with families. The expectation is that they're communicating those with families on what those apps are and why they're using them, with the language of parents can request to opt out of those teacher choice applications.
That's great, thank you.
So, I mean, I'm not anti-technology or anything, and it's been really interesting. I remember that that when you guys came, 5 years ago, and that was like right COVID time, and so it was really important to ensure there was connection in time where we didn't have that connection. It's really hard sometimes, I think, to separate the use of technology in school and kind of just like life, right? Parents, kids having access. And I think across the country, we're all kind of experiencing this, like, what do we get ourselves into, because connection is really important, and I feel like even you look at jobs now, they're starting, people are coming back to work because one of the biggest things is like creativity and connection, and you usually get to a better solution or outcome if people can actually be in a room together. So I think like a lot of this kind of compounds on, of course, our education system and how we're showing up, and it can also I feel like it can also unintentionally widen some gaps in terms of equity, and so that's kind of something that in this space, I'm learning a lot about, and looking at my own kids and the impact that it's had on their learning and their relationship building in school at all different levels, because I have kids at every level right now, elementary, middle, high school, and college, and I'm watching that, the impact of technology. I look at myself as a model, as a parent, like, when I'm on my phone all the time, or like trying to, and that's, and so I've been really evaluating that, because it impacts behavior, and I mean, there's so many things, right? So I think my question, though, as we continue this conversation is, have you seen, or what differences are we seeing in how students from different socioeconomics backgrounds experience and benefit from technology? Because, I talk a lot about like extracurricular activities, or like staying engaged in the summers, and like not that learning loss, and how to, we ensure there's access to camps and just different learnings. And sometimes the research I've seen and stuff is sometimes students in different socioeconomic backgrounds, because there isn't access to some of those functions of being out in horse camps and all these things, and it kind of defers to a technology. And so, like, what kind of have you been? Is that a consideration as we look at kind of what our district is, kind of some practices around technology?
Yeah, I would think that really frames back to our digital equity definition, which we framed and came back to 2 years ago. The conversation around digital equity really came out of the Digital Equity Act of 2021. It framed a lot out of healthcare at the time as well. And it's not necessarily about the concept of technology, but the reality is, in the digital society that we have, in order to access resources and in order to participate in the society that we're in right now, that we have to consider what that means in terms of ensuring, from an equity standpoint, the right resources are in the right place. It's kind of to your point of, technology taking over potential communities. I think that's something we need to be mindful of. But one of the other lenses we're looking at is how do we make sure that we're creating a stable, equitable playing field for all individuals coming in. That's part of our conversations around artificial intelligence. Of, if we lock this down as a district, we have families and communities with a lot of access to resources that they're going to use artificial intelligence on their own at home, get additional access to resources, where that will leave other communities potentially out. So how are we bridging that gap? I think on the reverse side of kind of where you're thinking of, I think that's an opportunity for us to kind of dig into some data and kind of understand some of those pieces. But where I will continue to caution is none of this is about technology. Technology is a resource just like a textbook. If we adopt this math curriculum and buy all these math curricular resources, it's all about how we utilize them within the space to provide opportunities and access for success for all of our students. Technology is in the same space. It's, again, how are we intentionally using it to create those opportunities and from a balanced, intentional approach within the space.
I'll just add on, I'll have my library media specialist hat, so access is so important to me. And I think, when I look at this slide, digital equity in the past used to just be about Wi-Fi and access to some kind of device. And I think now it is being nuanced now into what are the learning opportunities that teachers are creating and what are the opportunities that students have to be creators and critical thinkers and collaborators. So we tried to elevate the examples of what we want students to be doing with technology, and it still is incumbent for us to continue with professional learning, with our curricular resources, so that it's not just about the technology, it's how that technology can support the curriculum as teachers are getting new resources, as they're learning new strategies, as Avid is becoming at all of our secondary schools. So that professional development is really important as well.
I have a series of questions. So first on page 60 with the time per student, how does this consider if there's two screens open, instructional screens and non-instructional at one time? Because I know firsthand that's, from my son's experience, that's happening a lot.
Yeah, so this does not differentiate in this time study of whether it's instructional or non-instructional. This is just the average total time per day that students across our system are participating in. Of course, we've got students who are staying highly focused within their instructional space. We've got some students that might deviate from that. We've got some students that use their device less than other students within a particular day within this space.
And this would be across the course of the day, so it doesn't help us understand how it's being used for core instruction versus electives.
Correct.
Too. And I know, I guess I'll preface my thoughts and questions with, one, we haven't talked about this in 5 years. A lot's changed in 5 years. And it's on us that we haven't brought this up in 5 years. And so I appreciate, I think Director Foster requested this topic. And there's been a lot of parent engagement and concern on this. So with that, textbooks. Where are we at on using textbooks, actual physical textbooks versus digital textbooks? Is the majority?
Brian, who can answer that? That's not Tony's
I can
background.
answer. So it is at our secondary level, it's quite common to have a digital resource as a textbook, but classrooms will have print textbooks available. There's many reasons why. For example, if a student is on a 504 and needs to have print text instead, they will have access to that. Sometimes we have athletes who have a concussion, they can't have screens, so we have many reasons why we have a classroom set of textbooks in classrooms as well.
So I guess that answer implies that it's the exception to have a textbook, not the norm at the higher grade levels.
I would say it's a classroom set that's available for students during the class hour that they're in that class.
So in that case, when does that switch happen? Middle school or elementary school, like where there's one classroom set and the rest is digital?
I would say starting in secondary and middle school.
Okay. Do we do learning walks for tech to see how tech is being used?
Yeah, it's been 2-3 years now, 4 years maybe, but yes, we have done learning walks to walk through.
Okay, and is that through this team or with teaching and instruction?
Teaching and instruction.
Okay.
So you've been doing them for 4 years, or the last time you did a learning walk was 4 years ago?
Last time a formal data learning walk focused on technology was 4 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do we have any teacher survey data on their experiences? I don't feel like we've had that in our surveys on kind of if they have concerns, what their day-to-day experience is, how they're feeling about tech use, the ability to manage tech. I know we heard from our students that our student reps expressed concern earlier this year. Do we have broader teacher feedback on our tech use?
Filter Ed survey. We've done a digital learning survey annually for 9 years. This is the first year we didn't do that because the tool we were using went to end of life. So Ryan has that data. There aren't specific questions about teachers' feelings around tech, but it's all been around the intentional use of the tech, how they're using it, how they're allowing, building capacity with creativity, collaboration, communication, and computer science skill sets.
And again, we didn't give really many parameters, and a lot of focus was like, what are the minutes, what was kind of tactical. So I think this is the start of the conversation, and we can maybe frame or ask more questions that we're going to want to know on this topic. There's just been so much with the science of learning, with brain development, with the impact of technology on brain development, and I think it's been clouded research on educational use versus non-educational use. I'd like to understand more on the pedagogical aspect of this and the science of learning and linking, what we're doing and the intentional choices we're making with that evidence-based, with the data, with how are we hearing from teachers that it's actually having a benefit to students in the classroom. Those are things we didn't ask in the, for this presentation. Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, so this is just kind of like for us. I feel like it's. Oh, we haven't talked about this in a long time, so we probably have lots of questions that were not asked for or covered in this. But the examples were words of relevant, fun, engagement. I struggled to see in the examples tonight where it tied to high quality instruction. So that's just something, and maybe it's just in the examples that were used versus elsewhere. I know a great advantage is the recorded videos so that when my student is at home and can go back and look, and some of the teacher made videos, in fact, so that they can restudy or they didn't get something, they go back and they can look at it. So I think there's just a lot more to dive into on this topic, but I think this is a good start to the conversation.
Yeah, so there's a Google Doc that can be put out, and like you said, it's the first time around, and there's a lot there. And I think I have a term that I call COVID amnesia. So after COVID happened, there's a lot that was forgotten prior to that, and there was a lot that became easier to do. And I can't remember if it was last year or our babies or students or the year prior. At one of the schools were saying that, they're just doing a worksheet, but the worksheet is on the computer. I don't know if you guys remember that in doing that. So, we can create a document and get that information, but a lot of that we're getting you, that's a lot of information, and it may not happen next week.
No.
But yeah, so, and no time, the only reason why I was mentioning it was because it's way more than technology. It's seriously down in the foundation of the pedagogy, what you were saying, everyone was saying, of what's happening around teaching, and us delving into what's that intentional teaching, and getting all that information to see what's there, and coming back at some point and advising the board that this is what we found.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think maybe we can regroup and say, what is it that we're really seeking to understand as kind of an outcome of a next conversation. So it's not like throwing a bunch of questions at you guys to go dig and have a really kind of cohesive conversation about what additional interests there may be to understand.
I'll just mention, you may not have seen the high quality instruction. I will say we had many more minutes of footage, and really what we're showing is maybe the product and not the process of all the work beforehand, all the instruction that happened beforehand to get to that point.
I'm kind of interested, I agree. I think there's a lot of interest in this topic, but I do see the benefits, and I think you were able to really articulate them well. But there is a side that it's not as beneficial. And I really think that's the honest conversation we want to have so we can make an informed decision, like what are all the sides of it, and I think this kind of gets to it. But I'm curious, I do agree, like I think that, I think there is COVID amnesia, and I also think 5 years is a long time in the technology space, and like I think there has been, I think that if anything for especially school districts after COVID, taking the time when we've made like big shifts to really take the time to evaluate, do we build on this? Do we kind of step back from it? And I think we need to have that really strong conversation because, if we aren't getting maybe the learning outcomes that we want, I mean, there's a lot to look at, with that. So I would agree that having kind of a more focused, hearing what this is a good start to the conversation.
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with everything that's being said. Like, I'm excited to see, I guess, the next level of numbers, like data down, right, to understand that, how we're measuring that intentional use and, how I think back to when I'm in school, how tech was used back then, and we're talking reel-to-reel projectors, right? It was Walt Disney up there interacting with Mickey like a billion different times, and some teachers just leaned on that. There's a guy who I don't know how many live-action Disney movies I saw in his class, so it was a lot. But so just trying to understand, I on the whole, right? When we just look at averages and things, it seems like it's okay, but my kids have told me stories, right? They've been, I see some of the assignments get good. I see some of the stuff they bring home, right? And is it a question of whether our teachers need help, whether they need more, professional instruction, whether there is some guidance and additional things that we can do, right, to help them, so.
I think it's the story behind the data. I think, what you're all highlighting is a conversation we always have around, again, coming back to the intentionality of the instructional pedagogy. When you look at the research within the education space, there hasn't necessarily been a lot of ed tech research looking specifically at devices because they're looking at the instructional pedagogy practice. So when you look at modern classroom or flipped education, which has a lot of positive data behind the impact of those instructional strategies don't operate or function without the use of the digital resource. But they're not focusing the study on the technology, they're focusing it on the pedagogy. So there's a lot of good opportunity for us to dig in deeper on the teaching and learning side to kind of share some of those perspectives in that space. One of the other things that I will share around just Osseo and many Minnesota districts in general, when you look at one-to-one resource access across the country, most school districts didn't have one-to-one access resources until the pandemic, and it was the federal funds that came into school districts and created an infusion that created, mass one-to-one implementations. Many school districts across the nation right now, as everyone's evaluating and having a good, intentional and needed conversation around this, are still in the infancy of actually implementing devices in the classroom space. We started this in 13-14. So I think, as Dr. Heil said, there's some opportunity of, we had some good things going, we still have a lot of great things going, and we had COVID in there in the middle, and as you all are sharing, it's a good opportunity to come in, reevaluate, reassess, and re-dig in to those opportunities of the resources we're providing and how they're being intentionally used.
I mean, I think for me, when you mentioned the word infancy, to me, I feel like, at least for some of us, we're not as fully bought into what that journey looks like and where we're going. So when you say infancy, I don't even know what the end looks like, what it looks like for us to be more intentional with our use of digital devices, what it looks like to have highly rigorous instruction through these devices outside of the examples that you showed today, which seem to be kind of more on the creative side. So yeah, I mean, I guess I need to know more about where this is going. One of the things I didn't get today was I still don't fully understand how our younger learners are using these devices versus our older learners. And so I would like more information on that. One of the things that stuck out to me was the student online activity by time of day. It is very clear to me that students are overwhelmingly using devices between the hours of 4 p.m. to 7 a.m. For other activity, which I'm assuming based on how it's categorized as non-educational activity. And so I guess I'm questioning the value of the device being available after 4 p.m., particularly between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And then this kind of goes back to a comment that you made earlier, that there's this expectation from the district that parents apply the same or similar rules as our school system, which in many ways is a fair expectation. But I also think it's important to acknowledge that as parents, and maybe I've missed it, but we don't have the same remote controls of the Chromebooks as we do with other devices in the household. And so, while I'm able to shut off other devices in the household at a certain time of day or night, I don't have the same ability to do that with the Chromebook without physically taking that and making sure they don't forget it in the morning. So yeah, I guess I just want to acknowledge that maybe needs to be a bigger discussion about what the real expectations are. We've talked before about, I don't know if it's easier to control devices in a school environment versus a home environment, but again, as parents, we don't have the same remote controls. And then also think about students having to transport devices all over the place. They're already doing it from classroom to classroom. At the secondary level, they're having to transport it to practices, to work, to all these other places. And I guess I'm not seeing the evidence that that's necessary. So yeah, I mean, I guess I would like us to evaluate if students really need the devices after school hours, particularly at nighttime. Other than that, I think the school board members, I think everyone covered many of my other questions. I don't know if y'all have any more on that, but I do also just want to say thank you for getting this conversation going. I know it's been kind of bubbling for a while. I am appreciative of the department and all of the work that you all do to support both our students and staff. And I'll look forward to more. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Sophie, you need to get close up.
All right.
You got 2 minutes,
All right. So we actually moved the last agenda item, which was language access, to the June work session. So we're actually at the end of the meeting. This meeting is adjourned at 8:30 or 8:28.
2 minutes early.